Jai Hind and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi. India and Philippines, two countries that are rarely put together in the same line as having very strong relations. This was the case until and unless recently a Brahmos deal came out. We all were very surprised and very happily surprised within India to see that Indian defense export is now going to be reaching out onto an international platform. Having said that, these two countries can develop into a certain, camaraderie in terms of their strategic partnership, relationship, or however you may want to put it across. We both have common, I won't call them adversaries, but common problems with the common person, and getting together would always help. To discuss this, I have with me Don McLain Gill, who's a resident fellow at the Philippines-based International Development and Security Cooperation. He's a geopolitical analyst, written about 90 articles. He specializes in India, Southeast Asia, security relations, and of course, Indian foreign policy. Thank you, Don, for joining me today for this talk and to analyze the foreign minister's visit to Sri Lanka, to the Philippines, I'm sorry.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And it's a true pleasure to be here and to discuss something which I believe is absolutely important and crucial for regional geopolitics.
Well, absolutely. One of the things that I'd like to open, because as we were talking offline, the knowledge base for India-Philippines relations is not that wide within India. And I would also put it as the same factor within the Philippines. Why don't you give us a brief background about how these two countries have a relation with each other in terms of, trade, in terms of people-to-people contact, and in terms of a strategic sort of a, partnership?
Absolutely, and thank you. And this is, I think, a wonderful point to start with, to set out the parameters of the complexities, challenges, and opportunities within the framework of India-Philippines partnership. Now, if we trace it back to post-independence and into the Cold War, structural factors prohibited both states from maximizing their partnership, primarily due to the overarching environment of the bipolar system during the Cold War. Now, it was greatly dictated by the two poles of that time, which was the Soviet Union and the United States, the Philippines being more aligned with the United States, while India being seen to be more comfortable with its partnership with the Soviet Union, especially with the formulation of the treaty in 1971. And on top of that, Pakistan was also part of a US alliance where the Philippines was part as well. And this significantly complicated the situation and caused a particular amount of strain between India and the Philippines during this particular period. However, during the post-Cold War period, we could see that there was more engagement, more accommodation from the two sides, especially since the Look East policy of the 1990s under Prime Minister Rao. This was a significant step to sort of consolidate India's presence and its engagements in Southeast Asia. However, again, the momentum was lacking, and there still was enough area and room for improvement to solidify the relations between India and the Philippines. As we can see, India's relations with other key Southeast Asian states is not up to par with its relationship with the Philippines, and this has been relatively true since most of the period after the Cold War. However, things started to pick up as Prime Minister Modi enshrined his Act East policy, which is seen to be a more reinvigorated, a more robust, and a more energized version of the Look East policy. Now, what needs to be understood is, people tend to be caught up with the conceptual ambiguities of the difference between Look East and Act East. But we have to understand it from India's perspective. During the time of the Act East policy, India has developed significant, robust diplomatic connections. It has significantly grown in terms of economic and military capacity. Its soft power, its hard power, all of these particular points have been highly emphasized compared to how it was in the 90s when there was significant economic challenges, when there were significant economic challenges and there were a number of political challenges, especially after the dissolution of the Soviet Union. Now, looking into post 2014, India Philippines relations received a much needed boost. There have been a significant level of high level discussions. In fact, former External Affairs Minister Sushma Swarajji cited the importance of adhering in terms of adhering the relevance and, of course, the safety and stability of the West Philippine Sea. And on top of that, India has also been, during these periods, has also been quite active in supporting the Philippines in counter-terror operations and aid. And on top of that, continues to solidify itself as a security provider in the region. We'll probably get to that in a bit. But just to cut it short, there have been a lot of high-level discussions. Prime Minister Modi's visit, and a couple of years ago, followed by President Ramnath Kovind's visit, which marked a number of significant cornerstone agreements between the two states. And this, I believe, has set the tone for more significant interaction in the future. And of course, this exhilarating Brahmos deal really adds the cherry on top to the picture when we talk about the understanding between Philippines and India. I agree, back to your first point, that there is a lack of awareness between the two sides in terms of reinvigorating the partnership. But now we can see that things are moving towards the right direction. In fact, if I may add a last point, Philippine Navy Chief has actually emphasized India's primary role in keeping the seas safe, and that it adheres to India's importance as a vital partner to the Philippines. So this, I believe, is very important to consider, particularly that both states adhere to the maintenance of the rules-based order.
I agree with you. With the entire world order today changing, and the swing coming towards the Pacific, the Indo-Pacific region, there has been one of the things that the world is realizing, that we'll have to kind of stand up on our own selves and figure out our own solutions, and make strategic partnerships with like-minded nations. That is something which we can see happening. And as I said in my introduction, and you've also mentioned it, the Brahmos deal actually came up, and suddenly India Philippines became a topic of discussion. It's not a small deal. $375 million is a large amount of money. On top of which, they're going to be, once a system gets integrated into a force, there are regular, replacement orders, there are spares, and a whole lot of stuff will happen, because there are people who will have to come over here to train. And so there's a whole plethora of activities that will start up. Leaving all that aside, strategically speaking, how do you see the Brahmos deal actually impacting the relations between both the countries?
Right, thank you for that. And first, you have to appreciate really the state-of-the-art technology of the Brahmos. The export version, of course, due to the limitations by the missile export regime, which India's part limits it to around 300 kilometers. And this is why the export variant was at 290, despite having ranges that are more than that, reaching 500. And in fact, India continues to consolidate its efforts to enhance the technology with a wider scope for range and, of course, speed. And speaking of speed, Mach 2.8 is incredible in terms of the ability to intercept modern and, of course, advanced fighter aircrafts, such as the J-20, the Chinese J-20, for example, and the ability for the Brahmos to deflect and, of course, to not be targeted by or intercepted by majority of air defense systems. So it's really absolutely important, and of course the flexibility of the equipment to be fired on different modes is absolutely important. So these are the things that we have to take into consideration primarily, and this will indeed add a significant boost for Philippine coastal defense, and of course its defense in total. which also complements its current undergoing modernization program for the military. So really, stars really aligned on this one particularly, and India's ability to provide state-of-the-art equipment, of course, to developing countries and those that have not do not have the capability to purchase a significant amount from, let's say, the United States, is significant in terms of that. And what it means actually for India is that India seeks to become a major defense exporter. If we look into the details, however, India is at the 24th of the SIPRI data for a major defense exporter. However, we could see a significant momentum that has that was seen if you compare 2016, 2018 to 2020 to 2021. We could see that India's exports reached a significant increase, and this is in line with, of course, its target for a $5 billion target by 2025 in terms of defense exports. And on top of that, if I may add, India's role as the role that it seeks to project as a security provider in the Indo-Pacific really complements this particular deal. And on top of that, other Southeast Asian countries, as Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand, are considering and talks have been advanced for the Brahmos as well. And this also significantly complements its ACE's policy. So these particular things have to be taken into consideration. Now, if you talk about the Brahmos per se, the order that was placed, the deal that was made, we have to be pragmatic, of course, in understanding the situation in Southeast Asia, considering the limited number of the equipment purchased by the Philippines, and of course, if you look into the assertiveness of China, the South China Sea, and of course its incredibly fast military modernization, the technology that it incorporates, the vast level of its military capabilities. We have to be pragmatic about not overstating this particular deal in terms of what it can do right now. However, this opens the door for India to tap into the Philippines defense market to provide more equipment. If I'm not mistaken, there are a couple of deals being lined up for radar systems and, of course, other forms of defense equipment, defense systems that have been going on. And in fact, there have also been reports that the Philippines would be considering to get more of these missiles. So this is exactly what I'm trying to say, that India has now gotten its foot on the door when it comes to the Philippines defense market. And now to be in a place to further solidify its position as a security provider at a time when the Philippines seeks to diversify its defense imports. And this, I believe, is something, again, it has aligned for this particular matter. And it would be very important for both countries to maintain that level of consistency in their engagement, especially in the defense sector, maritime security, and whatnot.
I agree with you. As a matter of fact, I was reading a report where the Philippines Army is also considering buying land-launched Brahmos missiles, and there are evaluations in progress with regards to this thing. And as you mentioned, in the Southeast Asian region, Malaysia, India is pushing hard to kind of sell its indigenous, fighter aircraft. I think the Tejas is currently in Singapore as we speak. For the Singapore Air Show as well. So yeah, India's defense is something, defense export is something which is being looked at with a very, very, concentrated effort. Having said the fact, which brings out to my next question, China, which is becoming an adversary for pretty much everyone in this particular region, with its belligerence in terms of the seas, with its belligerence with India, in the land borders. All these issues pretty much are non-required issues, but they've been, cropped up because of a very one-sided approach by the Chinese. We had as you mentioned, the president of India visited, the defense minister visited, and today we've got the foreign minister of India also visiting Philippines. This comes at the background of the Quad summit. So a lot of people are actually, talking about it as it's a security-related meeting. What is your opinion, and how does the Philippines look at India's partnership in providing for some sort of a deterrence to the Chinese?
Right. Thank you for that. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Dr. Jaishankar's arrival in the Philippines and his stay from 13 to 15 February is absolutely important. It comes at a very timely manner. First, there was the Brahmos deal that was made. Then we have the Quad Foreign Ministers meeting, and then we have the Philippine presidential elections coming up in a few months. This is absolutely important when we look into the factors that have motivated this visit. On top of that, Dr. Jaishankar and his counterpart, Foreign Affairs Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr., met today in the Department of Foreign Affairs, where they really engaged and reviewed the bilateral partnership to see the areas where that can be improved significantly and areas that need to be addressed. On top of that, regional and global issues were also discussed. Now, India is a significant cornerstone in the peace and stability of the Indo-Pacific. It is a major Indo-Pacific power that seeks to complement and maintain and work within the rules-based order as it complements its democratic values as the world's largest democracy. Now, we have to look into India's engagement in Southeast Asia, in the Pacific for that matter, in the Western Pacific. I really try to emphasize that we have to understand India's engagement beyond the narrowly conceived perception that everything India is doing is to just counter China. We have to understand that India is a potential great power. Its economic capabilities are significant, its military capabilities are significant, and of course, the networks, which I've just mentioned, are also significant and noteworthy. So it is inevitable for a rising great power to engage not only in its neighborhood, but also in its extended neighborhood. However, what's important to note is that India seeks to complement the international order and does not seek to revise it. It is significant in terms of maintaining, of course, its partnership with ASEAN, its recognition for ASEAN centrality. So these are the areas where the Philippines and India can work significantly in terms of the institution of ASEAN and bilaterally as well. So this is very important for both countries. And on top of that, though I'm not saying that the power competition with China is not important, in fact, it is a vital aspect of India's foreign and security policy, considering the assertiveness that China is doing in India's neighborhood, in South Asia and the whole Indian Ocean region for that matter. And it's actually interesting because back in 2017, when India had talks about exporting the Akash missiles to Vietnam, China was very negative about it and said that it would not sit with its shoulders, with its arms crossed, and it would take stern measures for this. But really, is this sort of thing warranted? Is this sort of remark warranted, considering that China is also a major military and defense exporter in South Asia? It also is continuing to build strategically located ports and infrastructure among India's neighbors, and of course, it continues to ramp up its infrastructure development in the borders, in the disputed borders in Bhutan, for example. There are issues with encroachment in Nepal, for example. So India does not really have any, in fact, does not have any narrowly vested territorial interest in Southeast Asia for that matter. And in fact, it seeks to present itself as a development partner and an alternative amid the power competition between the United States and China in Southeast Asia. Of course, Southeast Asian states such as the Philippines are wary about the impact of the power competition between the two powers. And India serves as a significant alternative for that matter. It has a vast economy, a huge market, and it has the values that are enshrined by the Southeast Asian states. And this really complements and really serves as a significant platform for more engagement between India and the Philippines and the rest of Southeast Asia.
Interesting that you mentioned that. And as a matter of fact, my perspective, on this particular matter is a simple one. Even if I'd like the relations, as you mentioned, the Act East policy that you had brought out in your first answer. If we need to move forward, keeping China in mind, let's do it, because India needs to expand its relations within the Southeast Asia. Being isolated with a few countries in the world with trade and stuff like that will not be helpful for our own dream of becoming a $5 trillion economy. And that's something which is very, very critical. So probably an opportunity which is in front of us, and I think we should grab onto it with both hands and move forward. My last question, actually, there has been a development that we can see towards the initiatives of the Sagar, which is, the looking after India's initiative of the Sagar. There are partnerships which are developing on a bilateral, trilateral, and a multilateral basis. India's cooperation with the ASEAN countries is building day by day, and that's something that we can realize. As far as the entire Southeast Asian sector is concerned, Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, all of them have their own ways of looking at Southeast Asia. I'd like to know what is the Philippines' perspective as far as the security situation within the South China Sea and its surrounding area is concerned. How concerned is the Philippines looking at the 200-ship Chinese militia that kind of went and stood in the Philippine Sea last year? So how does the Philippines themselves look at the security situation in the region?
Thank you so much for that question. I believe it's a very timely question, and it sort of complements what I wrote in my new recently released co-author book called "The Rise of Philippinization." Philippinization is not Finlandization, and this really sort of projects the Philippine perspective of not only Southeast Asia and the South China Sea, but the Indo-Pacific as well. And this is absolutely important. The Philippines is an Asian middle power. It has a geostrategic location. It is very significant. It is at the entrance of maritime Southeast Asia, and there are vital sea lines of communication surrounding it. And of course, its position as an alliance, as an ally of the United States, a major trading partner of China, and a member of ASEAN, and of course the geographic heart of the Indo-Pacific, really sums up its significance in the region. And the Philippines is definitely aware of the assertiveness of China in the South China Sea, and the fact that it is provoking the Philippines from securing its sovereign rights, and even within its exclusive economic zone, the PLA Navy continues to apprehend the Filipino fishermen from achieving their livelihood, for that matter. And all these things are significant in terms of the Philippine foreign policy. In fact, the need to actually understand that the Philippines can go beyond ASEAN, for that matter. As we have to understand, ASEAN is not completely in perfect shape as of the moment due to the fault lines that have appeared, due to the power competition between the United States and China. And going back to India, India's partnership can serve as a significant alternative for the Philippines, for that matter, to be able to achieve its national and security interests. Security and growth for all in the region, Sagar, it significantly complements the objectives of the Philippines in terms of placing itself in the region and, of course, achieving its security and national interests. And this, I believe, is absolutely important. In fact, the issues of the South China Sea continue to maintain its position in Philippine political discourses, geopolitical discourses. The need to think out of the box, to go beyond the traditional and into the practical, is necessary for the Philippines. And I feel that India comes in favorably in this equation. Both like-minded states that adhere to democratic values and the maintenance of the rules-based order is absolutely significant. And this, I believe, is necessary as a necessary catalyst for both the Philippines and India to step up their cooperation. And I hope that the momentum will continue, considering that the environment, the geopolitical landscape of the region continues to shift. Domestic and environmental factors continue to add challenges to the equation. But for all that is important, it's necessary for both the Philippines and India to continue looking towards the right direction, and that is to solidify their partnership.
I don't think there can be a denial or a counter perspective to something as plain and simple as that. Don, this has been a great interaction. I think we've touched upon a lot of things which are important to both the countries, and it is always about finding mutual interest. And even if, as I said earlier, uh, security aspects are the ones that are rising today, and that creates a certain amount of mutual cooperation between both the countries. So be it. In defense ties and defense export ties are not as shadowy and as bad as many in the world perceive them to be, but relations between two countries who understand each other's defense requirements are generally very good, because they can look through the other one's eyes and understand what that country is probably going through, and provide for the support or the assistance or whatever is required at that particular point of time. It's about today's world is about backing someone's initiative, and Indian Philippines have a small amount of trade, about 1.25 billion dollars. Correct me if I'm wrong. With this Brahmos deal, obviously, is going to increase a little bit. I hope things do become better and better in days to come. And I'd request you, we can catch up sometime, and as a matter of fact, try and analyze how these situations are being taken forward in the near future, to realize whether India and Philippines have been able to walk the talk in terms of what we want to do. Thanks so much, and till next time for
Thank
another
you so
talk.
much. It's always a pleasure, and thank you, and I really appreciate it. Looking forward to more engagements in the future.
Thank you. Bye-bye.